take some time to think about your inquiry based unit plan, which is the culminating task for this course. This will be a collaborative task that involves four different stages that would be submitted within the next 4 weeks leading up to the final class, where you will be sharing your completed unit plan. Let's go through each one of the components. So you will be developing a collaboratively created unit plan that integrates social studies and at least one other curriculum area. Now, this doesn't seem as complicated as it sounds. You're going to put the focus on social studies, and then as you're developing lessons throughout that unit, you're bound to incorporate another curriculum area like language, or maybe perhaps math, or perhaps visual arts, or perhaps phys ed. So don't think of it too hard in terms of the second curriculum area. Keep the focus on the social studies. When planning a unit plan for any subject, but in our case focusing on social studies, there are quite a few components that we need to consider. The first one is to decide on the grade and the strand that you're going to be focusing your unit on. Because social studies is taught in one big unit, because there's two strands, one for each term, the expectation is that you are teaching all of the overall expectations and all of the specific expectations within your unit. Therefore, you have to plan for that. Now, all is in quotes because there is no possible way to teach every single one of the 398 specific expectations that are found in any strand for any grade within the curriculum document. And really, that isn't the point. What we want to do is to cluster those expectations that make sense for the focus that you're going to be taking your unit in. Even though the topics for social studies is already named, how you approach it is really dependent on your learners, what you'd like to focus on, and what they want to focus on. Hence that inquiry portion. What kind of questions are they asking about this particular topic? And then therefore use those specific expectations to teach the skills to be able to address the questions that are being posed. The other big component is the culminating task. This is the final product that the students will be creating in order to show their understanding about the key aspects of the unit. Now, the culminating task can take on a variety of different forms. It could be a podcast, a website, a commercial. It could be a dance or a drama performance piece. It could be visually arts-based. It could be something that they create or develop. It could be a presentation. It could be a report. It could be an essay. What we want it to be is innovative and exciting. We want the learners to be excited to be able to create this task. And so usually we create a story around the culminating task, some kind of scenario that makes the activity exciting for them and gives it meaning. So we want to ground the culminating task around real world experiences. So, a grade 3 writing report isn't necessarily a real world experience for them. But not to say that you can't do that, but the purpose for them doing that needs to be clear and needs to be grounded in something that's interesting to them. The other aspect that we need to think about after we've got the culminating task is if this is what we want them to complete and to finish off with, then what activities, what learning experiences will I need to ensure that they have in order for them to be able to produce that product. So therefore, you have to develop a variety of different learning experiences or lessons. People always ask, well, how many lessons should I create, Charmaine, for a social studies unit? And my response is, I really don't know. How many do you need in order to get to that culminating task and to cover the majority of the specific expectations? Now, knowing that the specific expectations isn't a checklist, and we cluster the expectations when we're teaching a lesson, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to cover all of that in 2 or 3 lessons. It's probably going to be within the range of 8 to 10 lessons in order to be able to create, or to get to a meaningful culminating task. And even some of those lessons will take more than one period to be able to complete. So usually a social studies unit will take 2 months to be able to complete from start to finish. Remembering that some teachers may actually integrate their social studies into language and use their language time to be able to cover the unit as well. The other thing we need to consider when we have a culminating task and we're thinking about the lessons, we're it's grounded in the big ideas and the curriculum expectations, is to think about questioning throughout the unit. Because it's an inquiry-based unit, and we've already learned that questioning is a key piece to that. So you need to think about where is questioning being posed throughout each of the lessons, and then what is that one big question that's going to be asked that covers the entire unit. It's going to be kind of like the umbrella question, and it's usually like a broad question, one that isn't going to necessarily be answered at the end. So we need to consider that within the unit plan as well. And we also think about assessment. How will you know that the students have learned and understood the lessons, the materials, the knowledge and understanding that has been gained through the various lessons? So we want to consider assessment as, of, and for learning throughout the unit. For any unit, regardless of whether it's social studies or math or any other curriculum area, there needs to be 3 assessment of learning in order for that unit to be addressed in a report card. So you have to have 3 assessment of learning, so that can be a quiz or a test or a mini task that they do independently for you to be able to see what they know and understand about the learning at that particular time within the unit. Of course, you'll be doing assessment as and for learning throughout. Assessment for learning is the descriptive feedback that you would be giving, and the assessment as learning is the metacognitive piece, where the learners are considering their own learning, how they're doing, how they're meeting success criteria. Of course, for every lesson, you will have success criteria throughout. So each lesson will have learning goals and success criteria, and also social goals, because if they're doing inquiry, they're probably working collaboratively. So you want to be able to integrate that piece as well. So as you can see, there's lots of things to think about, and that's why we're going to be doing this unit in smaller chunks. We'll explain that in the next slide.